everybody. How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Rewind with Ro. I'm your host, Ro Carter, and my amazing, detailed, shaped up co-host over there, looking good. All right.
Thank you.
Still rocking the mustache, everybody. Mr. Rob Smith.
Still rocking the stash.
Hey, me and you both.
Yes.
How's your week been?
It's been good. It's been, productive and wonderful. I always say I cannot complain. I guess we can always complain, but I don't. I choose not to. I'm in a good space.
Good space.
Living life.
All right.
Life is golden.
Yeah, life is good. It's humid now. You're back in LA, I see. But it is getting humid out of Miami. You know, when you walk outside, you're like, ooh.
It's that sticky hot, right?
Yeah. I can't even imagine what the summers are like down here. We usually go back to Boston, but I don't know. I can't do it.
Oh, that's right. You're usually in Boston. Now you're in Miami, doing it up.
Working on my tan. Glistening. So before we go, we lost some people the past couple of weeks, and also recently today. So Louis Gossett Jr., we didn't give him an honorable mention 2 weeks ago with the show. Sorry about that, but wanted to mention him. Also, I'm from New York, so DJ Mr. C, he was a big part of hip-hop, especially with Biggie. He passed away at the young age, I think, of 55. Ugh. Gotta take care of yourself, people. Yep. And then O.J. Simpson. I don't know how you feel about O.J., but O.J. passed away due to cancer. Hopefully they do a CTE test on his brain, see what happens, see what's going on in there.
Well, it's an interesting situation because, the OJ situation was so polarizing from a race perspective. And I feel like there was such a divide in the way that we all lived that experience. And we all probably remember where we were.
Where were you?
I was in high school. And I remember when they announced the verdict, they let class out and they sent us all home early because it was like all the black kids were like, screaming and excited and happy, and all the white kids were sobbing and crying. And I think it wasn't a circumstance where we were considering the actual case. It was a circumstance. So I think for people of color, we were looking at it like, oh my God, this is a time that a person of color actually received some kind of justice that seemed like it was balanced in a court circumstance. So it was less about the trial than that. I think it was an emotional response to that. But my response today is like, I get it. We all have our perspective, but he still has kids and grandkids. And I like people like running, like cheering that this person is dead. I think we should be careful about cheering death, especially through cancer, no matter what the circumstance is. But I understand both sides of it. I understand, but people like cheering on newscasts and things like that is a little weird to me when, people are grieving his family. But I understand the grieving on the other side too. I get it. I completely get it. But such is life.
Oh. All right. Yeah, I was in high school as well, senior year, and did the same exact thing on the East Coast, where they were going to let us out early if the verdict was guilty. To add on to what you just said earlier, listen, that was such a movement because people forget the Rodney King got his behind beat down by like 6 cops, and we watched that live, and none of the cops were charged, right? So it just added more to this case. Like, there's nothing we can do. Even when we have a videotape, of all the lynchings that have gone on in history to people of color and especially African Americans, slavery, all that stuff. And then to see Rodney King, and then in LA, then you had the Watts riots, and then so now you had this OJ trial, and so they knew it, and it was like a melting pot. It was a ticking time bomb about to explode because black people at this, we were like it was going to be January 6th for us if he was guilty. And again, if I look back at it now, I don't think I'd feel the same way because OJ manipulated the system and manipulated us to back him and support him. Because he didn't do that much for us after that, and he didn't do that much for us before.
At all. And again, that's all, to your point, like that's what I was saying. I think it was a circumstance where it was black people rallying behind this situation where it was like black people felt like there was some kind of justice done in a system where traditionally there is not for people of color. So I
But
don't
again, it wasn't even our system because it was a system you had money, financial system, right?
absolutely.
So, and that's what we forgot. We still saw somebody that looked like us, but we were missing the bigger piece where we see now is like, listen, even when you see Trump go through this stuff, it's like he's being looked at a whole different level. Forget he's the president. It's a former president. It's because he has the money, the finances to really deal with that. So that's that class, but always saying, hey, no, I feel for you. Imagine they're doing this to me, what they could do to you someday. And it's just like, it gets convoluted and you're like, that makes sense. Some people are like, so I feel the energy and I think it's a time for America to really reflect and look at itself and say, hey, why were people of color? Why were Black people so much cheering? They didn't understand at that time. They weren't ready for that conversation. Yeah. But I think now you can really have, what I challenge any news channel to really have that conversation about, what that OJ trial really meant for American society and for people of color in America.
But oddly enough, I still feel this tinge of polarization happening again, even the way that people are having conversations around his death and the way that people are framing the conversations. So there's a way that like specifically like young Black athletes are framing the conversation because a lot of them are like, hey, rest in peace, because they didn't live through that circumstance. And then there's news channels that are like, we're so happy that this person is dead. And I'm like, this is just a weird way to address the conversation. I heard one news report earlier say, oh, it was an interesting trial because there were 8 Blacks on the jury and a few Hispanics and 1 Caucasian. And like, it's now becoming this race conversation again. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, again, and I don't think it should not be a race conversation, but the conversation needs to be had when now we have the facts, right? We have all these details and we can say, hey, why were we thinking that way? Why was it such a big movement? What led up to that? I had to recall, I was like, oh yeah, why it was so big, not only because it was a Black person, but people forget the Rodney King. I'm from New York. Aladou Louima and Diallo. I learned the word vestibule as a kid growing up in New York. Man got shot 57 times in the vestibule and he was just getting his keys out of his pocket by NYPD. And then you had another dude, a plunger up his behind, like in New York. And it was like, yo, what is going on? We can't arrest, we can't do this. So on both coasts, you felt that energy was that boiling point of we're just like, yo, we're tired of this. And I guarantee you, man, if it would have gone a different way, woo!
Anybody who lived through that definitely remembers where they were, what they were doing. And we were all glued to the TV. I think we all were either glued to the TV.
Oh, yeah, if you had a TV in your school, they played it live, like right then. And I was like, oh, and here we go. And they were like, nah, we're good. And everyone's like cheering. And then you saw some other people in the corner. They were like, but they felt but that's the thing. They didn't understand that feeling. Now, for 2 seconds out of their whole entire life, they got to feel what it feels to be the person on the other side, right? And not get justice.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I digress.
Interesting. But we'll see how it pans out.
Yeah,
and I was just talking about this with Val earlier, the owner of blackfilm.com. It's because of the egregious thing that was done and the dark shadow that kind of enveloped his life and his legacy. We forget he was like an actor, so he was in like a lot.
Listen, he was the man. He was OJ.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm like, because it's interesting that people are like, oh wait, he was an actor too, and I'm like, yeah, he was in like all the airplane movies. He was in a lot of stuff. So
what I've learned, the younger generation, unless you tell them, like show them, they don't care. Yeah. My girlfriend the other day, she's like, Marky Mark was a rapper, and I was like, oh my god. I like
really. Oh my god!
Like, I had her see Ghost, and she was like, Whoopi Goldberg was an actress, and I was like,
you're like, what did
more? She was such a fan. I was like, oh my god, I loved him. I was like, what are you doing? She's like, we didn't do that. Yeah, it was just a different time. So we have a thing now. We do like an old movie every Friday, and so she can see like what's going on and what's the new kind of stuff. And just to be like, oh my god! And then she always says like, so and so. Like I remember a kid the other day. I was telling him like LL Cool J was a rapper. He's like, no way. Like these kids. They can't even imagine that someone had another career before they became an actor. They only see him one way. So it's
Yeah.
very interesting. Anyway, so we got a new show tonight that's shown on BET. I saw it and I was like, oh, let me check this out. It's Diarra from Detroit. Am I saying that right? Diarra from Detroit, with an attitude too. So basically, it's following a young, beautiful black woman. She's tall too. Recently separated from, of all people, you're gonna see who her ex is. That's crazy. But recently separated, decides to move into her mom's house in Detroit, where she grew up, and she's going through some things. She's also a teacher, so low income, just trying to work through the days, and in doing so, she's trying to find love again. Right? Her ex tried to ask her to have an open relationship, and instead of them, well, I want to ask you a question on that too, by the way. But asked her to have an open relationship, so instead of her having the conversation, she just went like, "Are you kidding me?" and lost it and was like, I want to get out of this. And in doing so, she falls in love with a guy on Tinder. They go on a lovely date, have an amazing night, and then he just disappears. She does, what all those shows and rom-coms do, where you text him a million times, like, this doesn't make any sense. We had a great conversation, everything was great. This was the guy. What happened to him? And then he just disappears, which leads us into Diarra becoming a detective in this show. So this show, it goes all over the place, but it's a fun ride. It literally reminds me of Issa Rae's show on HBO, where she narrates, and also you kind of feel the vibe. Like, she's like, girl, I'm crazy, just kind of going through stuff and figuring out. So it really is a fun, positive, I think, show where young black women can see, hey, she created this show on her own. She wrote it, directed, and she's in it. That's amazing. I love that. I love seeing that. So shout out to this young lady. Oh, let me get the actress' name. Yeah, it is Diarra.
What's her name?
Well, I want to make sure I get the last name.
Yeah,
Diarra Kilpatrick. So shout out to her, and shout out to this amazing cast. So add on to that, Rob, if you like.
Oh, add on to it? Okay.
What did you think of the show? So I picked the show. What did you think of it when I first selected it? Were you like, another show, BET, what are we doing? What's going on?
No, when you first selected it, surprisingly, I was like, I'm really excited to see the show, because I auditioned for this show.
Really?
Yes,
What did you audition for?
For Mr. T. But I
was Rob!
A friend of mine actually booked it. His name is Brian Terrell Clark. He's an amazing actor. He's like popping up in everything. So I was excited to see that he booked it. And I will say my audition, the character, I auditioned with a different direction of the character, which probably wouldn't have worked. But I knew it was already going to be good, because I knew it was a Kenya Barris show, which is why when I got the audition, I was like, yes, I want to work on the show because it's Kenya Barris. And I knew it was just going to be funny. I thought it was going to be funny. So I knew it was going to be a good show. I was excited to see and really fully comprehend what the concept was, because I had seen a lot of the clips floating around from the show, specifically the one with Felicia Rashad that they've been like really pushing that clip. So I was like, what is this going to be? And then I knew it was going to be, I knew it was like, oh, I got ghosted and I'm going to do some detective work to figure out what was going on. But it's much deeper than that. And it's much more well-rounded than that. I think that is like a really great starting concept for it. But I think the direction that they took with the story is really cool. And while there are a lot of moving parts, it's very, very well written. And like you said, it has some really amazing all-star actors in it. Like you have the Morris Chestnuts, and it has some great, great, great cast members. Felicia Rashad. So you see all of these wonderful, amazing actors on the show, alongside a lot of like, I hate to say new faces, because these are people who have been working and busting their butts for their careers to take off to this magnitude for a very long time. But for all intents and purposes, to be working next to Morris Chestnut or Felicia Rashad, or there's some other really, really great names on the show. So I'm super excited to see where it goes, because we're going to start with the first 5 episodes, which are out right now, which are great.
So what I want to do is, I thought about it after going through it again. I don't want to dissect, because then you kind of give it away, where I just watched the last one. So what I decided to do, we'll kind of go through points, through those episodes, and maybe add on to that like parts we like or what we're looking forward to, or hopefully this will kind of go this way, or what we think may happen. Maybe we'll do something like that.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But let's start off with the ghosted part. So I don't know if you've never been ghosted before, but sometimes, you know, it happens out there. And so we tend to overreact or underreact. What did you think about that scene in terms of, is that the right reaction based on how it went down, or was she a little bit over the top?
You know, she is me. And I like that you made the comparison to Insecure earlier, because I think her character is like this quirky, smart. She went away to college, came back, she got married, didn't work out. She came back to her old neighborhood. She's kind of trying to find her way of like reconnecting with people from her past, and then also her relationships with the people who she like, the relationships she's developed, you know, as she's moved on in her life. So she's like this kind of quirky, nerdy, funny, unique personality. So her viewpoint of the world and her viewpoint of relationships is so funny to me, because she's like, oh yeah, I was this close to a relationship, and they like went on one date. So it was
yeah. She already married him and everything. I was like, girl, exactly. And that's what I love about the character. They're like, girl, you crazy. You only went on one date. Like, no, you don't know what he was telling me. You don't know what he was telling me. Like, I'm special. Trust me. We had something.
Exactly. So I get it. So I feel like I've been in that circumstance before where I've met somebody and I felt like we had a great connection, and I'm like, something must have happened to them, because there is no way that they would not have called me back after the connection we had over that drink last night. Like, there's no way. There's no way.
You know, maybe they're busy. Maybe they got, you know, work. They lost their phone. Like, there's no way in this day and age where you can't just reply back. But I've met people that literally have unanswered text messages. I would like 50 of them. I'm like, you don't answer your text messages when someone texts you? I was like, I'll get back to it when I want. I'm like, I was like, but I couldn't even fathom that. Like, my brain just doesn't like work like that. There's people out there. I think they're crazy in the head. They're just like, all right, yeah, thanks. Awesome.
And they're leaving a person like me to think something happened, and I might have to start doing my detective work. I'm telling you, because we might have had a great relationship, or that one night stand, it was really good.
I ain't never had a one night stand that good that I was like, you know what? Are you okay? You know, like, no, like really, like, hey, did you die? Did you? I went. No, you know what? I'm lying. When I was younger, I went on a one night. Not a one night stand, but I went on a date. It was set up as a blind date, and it was just weird chemistry, because you know, meeting somebody for the first time, you just talk, and it was fine. You know, nothing more. And then so now after that date, I would say, hey, if anybody want a date, just text me, make sure you got home. So on her way home, going home to Brooklyn back in the day, she got jumped. Yeah, I found out by the friend who hooked us up. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I didn't hear back from her. I don't know if anything happened. She's like, bro, she got jumped the next day. She got jumped going home. I was like, get the hell out. Yeah, she had maced the guy and ran. I was like, so now your date becomes like, I'm not even thinking about you. I'm just trying to think about Liz. So it's just one of those things. So ever since then, I've always, on a date, regardless of it went good or bad, just, hey, let me know, text me you got home, okay? And that's it.
Yeah, I do that too. And that's my little thing to make sure that we really gonna stay in touch. And if you don't text me back, I might send you one more. See, and then I turn into this character. Wow. Like, something must have happened. They must have gotten a car accident. They must have got jumped. They got kidnapped. Something happened, because there's no way they ain't responded to me.
I wish we could put a warning ticker on the bottom, just warning people that if they do decide to date Rob, that he might be a little bit, clingy, stage 5 player.
Ghost me.
Okay. All right. Rob, what's your status now?
I'm single.
Okay. Just checking. Saying he's available, ladies and gentlemen. Available. If you like that kind of intenseness.
If you like a hopeful romantic, like she is on this show.
Yeah, you. And that's the beauty of that too, right? Like, she's looking for that soulmate again that she found, I guess, in her ex, played by Morris Chestnut. And you don't really get to feel Morris. You see him, but you don't really get to feel his energy on the show until like later in the series. So, which gave it a good balance too, right? Because you're like, oh, look at that! I want to touch that. I want to see that. I want to feel that. And they're like, no, you can't have him just yet. You got to wait for it. It's like, okay, we'll wait for Morris. But in the meantime, though, we're going to meet the characters. And so when I was comparing it to Insecure, I also want to compare it to like one of those detective shows, and also Friday, because the characters remind me of a lot of like Friday characters. Those funny characters that are either going to try to rob you or try to sell you something or got the hookup. And so you get to see all these amazing characters in this show, which really make Detroit come to life. And then later on, we also talk about Detroit, right? Like, what's it known for from outside looking in, and what's it really known for the people that have been there the longest. So I really love that there's a heart and pulse of the city that a lot of times you don't get to feel that on the screen. And they definitely represent that, not right off the bat, but kind of later on down the episode, just saying like, hey, this is Detroit. This is what it's always been about. So I really love that they stick to that. So basically the first chapter, right, she's trying to find this guy and find some clues to see that tells her, hey, he's definitely been kidnapped, right? And so, which leads to she's tying two things together, right? A missing kids report, and also now him being a grown man and him being taken as well. So what do those have in common? And so which opens up a whole other level of new characters where she actually runs in Felicia Rashad's character, her friends kind of helping her out, which that is great. Her sidekick, she is hilarious. What is that? Aja, right?
Yeah, and back to what you were saying before. Yeah, I love that. I love the variety of the relationships on the show, and I think I talk about this all the time with friends, and I think we talked about it before too. Where you talking about her friend? Are you talking about Mona or Mona is the friend who lives next door to her, who is like her childhood friend.
Who's the one who has the switchblade? Yeah, Mona. Mona has switchblade. Mona.
So this is what I love too. Like, we're not a monolith, Black people, right? So we're not all the Cosby Show and we're not all Friday, right? So I think this show is the perfect marriage of both of those. And it's one of them circumstances where anybody who watches this show is going to be on one side of it going, I know somebody just like that. Somebody who's Mona, who's like, I know somebody just like Diarra. And there's going to be somebody like, I know somebody just like Mona, who I grew up with, who ain't never going to let go of the past, who always going to judge me because I moved on a little bit. So I feel like, and then you're going to have somebody who's like the successful cheater, like Morris Chestnut, or the neighbor across the street who might rob you, but he also might fall in love with you. So it's like, there's all these amazing dynamics.
That's why I moved. Yes.
There's all these amazing dynamic of characters, which really does build this show. It's like a really cool ensemble of characters who are in varying like places in their life and from varying experiences in life, and they're all smashed together because they all know her. So it's really interesting to watch as the story progresses. Yeah, so I think that was a major part of it. But yeah, I really enjoyed the dynamic of that relationship specifically, and her and Mr. T. Like, I think all of them together.
Yeah, he comes alive later on in the episodes.
Yes.
So because you need that. I think it helps that male balance, right? Because the females are, and they're coming on the both cylinders of like boom, 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 boom. And you're like, okay, because you're like, yo, chill. Let's talk about this for a minute. Like, are you being crazy? Or are you being rational about how you're approaching this? And so that always comes around, right? As you watch this character, like, is she crazy or is she no, or is she right? And shoot, do I want somebody to look for me? If I got someone kidnapped me, do I want someone to look? I would love for somebody to kind of look for me as well.
No, the reason I laugh so hard, Ro, is because I'm telling you, I'm watching this show going, am I crazy? Because I relate to everything she does. Because if you ghost me, I'm really about to be out in the street going, they must have got kidnapped, because there's no way they ain't call me after that date. There's no way. There's no way. Every episode, I'm like, am I crazy?
Rob, there's so many red flags. Ooh, you better hope this episode doesn't get out. You better hope.
I'm about to be a detective.
You ain't never gonna get a date again. At least in America, you ain't never gonna get a date again.
Oh my God!
You love me? Whoa, buddy. We have one drink.
Oh God, I love it. What can I say? Again, right. I am a hopeful romantic. If you are watching, I am
passionate about my love.
Hopeful.
So anyway, Diarra's character decides, hey, she wants to find clues, so she wants to go back to his house. So here's where I was thrown off. So I'm watching the show, and all these things this guy was early on the blind date and everything, and he was very playful. The mannerisms back and forth, like, hey, whoa, relax, you're going too fast here, and it was playful banter. and then they're like, hey, let's fast forward and make this the third date. And I was like, I've done that one time where that's just to hook up. That's basically what that is. You know, he was like, I don't want to look like, hey, one night, you know, I don't want you to shame me. So let's speed this up. So what would you do on your third date? Well, I learned this about you, learned that, and now let's cut up. So anyway, with that being said, the guy that I thought it was going to be, I thought his place was going to be like amazing. So she goes to his house. No, but at least like something like she goes to his house and I was like, whoa, what's going? And I'm like, girl, you falling in love with this?
Like, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Right? You met the wrong dude. That ain't the dude that I saw you with. That ain't the same dude.
That's a good point, but it actually works for the story because as we find out more, no, I'm saying it works for the character. What is actually going on with the character. So because we don't know what is happening with the character, just like her, we're walking into his apartment like, what is going on? Because
I'm waiting for the girlfriend to be like, oh girl, you ain't risking all this for this.
Oh, she did. Yeah.
You want a knife? You want to go in? I got mace too. What you want to do? And so they go into his place and then they find a guy tied up, a Russian dude tied up in the closet. She helps him get unleashed and then he runs out, but he drops a phone. And so she uses her detective ways to find out, you know, where she can find this guy again later and find out more information. And again, we're thrown for a spin too, because we're like, what? Now a Russian guy's involved? Like, so, you know, these pieces are being thrown at you on the way. They're kind of trying to throw you up the scent, but at the same way, it keeps you engaged, right? And so I love that because it could go totally left. Yeah. And the show doesn't. It still keeps you on the rails, okay? Gonna throw you some stuff, but it doesn't go off the rails, which is nice. And then which leads us into learning about the Russian story and how that happened. So what I love is when we go into a new chapter, we do the back trail about what happened and how that person got there. And so it's like, oh, okay, cool. So we get to see both sides. Even though she doesn't know that, at least we as the viewer gets to see that. What did you think about that back and forth?
Again, like I addressed at the beginning, I think the writing is so well done for this show that you're taking on this journey in pieces and you don't know where you're going to go. But because of the world that you're in, you're like in the middle of the hood in Detroit and you're like following this like quirky ensemble of people. You don't expect it to go where it goes, but it's a fun journey. And because it's written so well, it makes sense. Like all the pieces are falling where they should. And you're becoming a detective with her. But yeah. I love how they give you enough of the little clues, but then she always has this moment where she's like, and then she puts everything together and she's like, that's what it is. But it's like they take you on a journey before you get to the point where she figures out all the clues together and what the next step is to like propel the story forward. But you're on the journey with her. So you're like doing the detective work along with her and her friends. So and all of her friends have not bought into this at this point either. Some of them are like, girl, you crazy. And then some of them have their own reasons for wanting to do this, you know, this hunt with her. So while everybody is not necessarily bought in because they believe what's going on, believe the circumstance, or they're not bought in because they just think she's crazy, there is a justifiable reason for why everybody's helping her. So it's up to this point, it's flawless to me. It's very well done.
Yeah. And again, the writing is exceptional. You're really in and locked in for the ride and kind of seeing how it unfolds. Going on to another chapter, another episode. Basically, it's called the third episode, The One That Got Away. So this is where we really try to find out the backstory of like why is he missing? She wants to find his mom, and this is when Felicia Rashad comes into act, which is great. And you're like, oh my God, a breath of fresh air, someone familiar. You're like, oh, Felicia Rashad. Felicia Rashad is gangster, ladies and gentlemen. There, she says some stuff that I was like, oh man, Miss Huxtable would never say that. And my ears were like, oh no, she didn't. But it's hilarious. It's not like forced. You know, sometimes when you have somebody, it's like, hey, I want to just get away from the character that everybody knows I am, so I'll just be this way. And you're like, oh, that was, but it was perfect. You know, she sold that. I mean, that's a legend that she is. Felicia Rashad, where, you know, she can do any role and you're just like, you know, I love her. In Creed, I love her, you know, all that stuff. So she's great on the screen, and I love that balance. And shout out to these young actresses. You know, you mentioned it earlier. You know, we don't know them because we don't see them on the screen, but they've been in this game for a while. And now when they get their time to shine, they're hanging in rooms of heavy hitters, right? That people that have been doing this for years and decades, and they're really hanging on with them, right? And they're getting that. You know, when you see somebody kind of forced and try to get into the scene, like
Yeah.
I'm watching, I'm like, oh wow, the timing, they're really getting it out. So I don't know how much of that is the on hand or just like, hey man, they haven't had their time to shine, and now they do. And sometimes, you know what, like Issa Rae said, sometimes you have to write your own stuff because people ain't ever trying to give you an opening. So you just got to make your own path. So I really love that. What do you think about that scene and about? I mean, that's the one that's big right now. That's really posting the show. But what do you think about when you actually saw it for yourself and how that character was introduced?
I think this is another testament to how well the show is written, right? So she's doing the detective work, and as such, as it should be, like she might follow the path of a clue for a minute or for an episode of the show, and then that path might end up being the opposite of what she expected it to be, which we've seen we find out a few times. So Felicia Rashad's character is the mother of this little boy who went missing, and we follow her because the expectation, or what everybody thought, is like she's this monster, she's guilty, she wasn't looking for her son for whatever amount of time, but her character is gangster, and it's like in the best possible way. And it was really fun watching her take on this role where she's like rolling up on people in this dirty beat up van. She got guns, she pulling guns on people, she got like 80 burner phones. She's just like
ready to go,
ready to go, like running into stores to buy like broke down TVs. Like, we don't know what is going on with this woman, but when you find out what she's doing, it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But again, it's like, it's a testament to the writing, because you're so glued to wanting to know what her character is doing and what was her involvement, what is she doing now, why does she seem like a lunatic running around in the street with crackheads, like what is this woman doing? And it just was a really, really fun episode, and I hope there's more to come with that character, because she was like so refreshing.
And also, it reminded me of I like a lot of those shows with cold cases where they try to get solved, and sometimes you can't solve them during the time it happened. It does take 10, 20, 30 years later, unfortunately. And that sometimes can suck in terms of like, you can't get all the information because that person has passed away now. All the missing pieces, like, oh, you can't tie them together, or an opening happens. So sometimes I would normally get frustrated. I'm like, oh, this person who's never been a detective is figuring all this out and putting these together. But sometimes it takes that one piece, 30 years later to come and open up everything else. So I kind of like that, how that slowly unfolds. And then that leads us into, the next chapter where she finds another clue that leads her to a former pro basketball player played by John Sally. I mean, listen, if you don't know who John Sally is, he was a Piston. He also won a ring with Jordan as well on the Bulls, but he was an old school ultimate bad boy. He was also in Bad Boys, by the way, the first one. He was a nerdy dude. He was fixing everything. They knocked him upside his head. He had glasses. So that's a throwback. But he's been acting, on and off since he retired. And so he always gets these scenes, but they actually have him like a meaty role. I'm like, really? John Sally? I mean, but he holds it down, and that opens up another story. And you're like, oh, okay. And that's when you kind of see Diarra's character. Like, is she still like pulling for straws, or does she actually have something concrete? And that's what our friends want to know at this point. Like, hey, girl, what are we doing? Like, do you actually have something that proves that your guy has been taken, that this character is also involved? Like, because if not, now it's getting serious, right? We've been shot at already when trying to find a Russian dude. We've been threatening our lives, all this stuff. Like, is it worth it? You got to ask yourself. And I think we slowly see Diarra's character start asking herself too, like, yo, what am I doing? Like, is this worth the risk? Also balancing her relationship with her ex and trying to finalize the divorce and what she wants and what his character is going to give him. So what do you think about all that coming together? Was it too much? Was it overwhelming, or did it have a nice flow?
No, yeah, it had it had a perfect flow, and this is the part, like if this was broken out like a film, right? This would be that part of the film where the characters like lost hope and they feel like there's no hope, there's nothing that can be done, and they're giving up, right? Because she's gotten to the point where she's followed so many leads, and it's like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I've thrown everything I have at it, financially, emotionally.
Yeah.
I don't know what else can come from this, so I give up. So there has to be that moment of like, throwing in the towel for the character before they get to the point where there's a resolution, or they figure out, or they move to the place where the problem is resolved, or she finds him, or just discovers what actually happened to him. So again, like, kudos to, but I expect nothing less from a Kenya Barris production. I love Kenya Barris, and I feel like all his stuff is always great in this way.
Give this brother a job. Just don't give him a date. Just don't set him up with a blind date, but give him a job.
Yeah, give me a job, please. Season 2.
Hold on. Let me ask some. Can you tell me how you played this character? Because I want to know. Seriously. So anybody watch the show, please. And Mr. T, played by Brian Clark. This is what this man auditioned for. Please tell me how you saw the character, because this reminds me of a Kevin Hart interview, and he was doing this HBO show Entourage, right? And Bow Wow got the part, and he was like, "This is how I approach it." But he's like, "No, Bow Wow did a way better job than what I." and so where Bow Wow is now, not to say he didn't, but he killed that role, right? And so sometimes you don't see that character. So I want to know, like, I'm trying hard to picture you first in the outfits, let alone like be. But I'm not saying you can't do that. But I just want to know how did you play that person?
Well, I approached it from the character being a little bit more forwardly gay, and the way that Mr. T is portrayed, he's very much not outwardly gay. So he just is, which I love, because again, like I said earlier, how Black people aren't a monolith, gay people are not a monolith as well. So gay people don't have to be outwardly flamboyant. You can be gay and not, I guess, gay presenting. And I think that's how he approached this character. And I think it was the right choice for this character, because it works in the environment and the culture and the way that the character also maneuvers relationships, right? He's a person who has one night stands, but he doesn't ever take a relationship too far. But we see him start to meet someone who he can take a relationship a little further with. Yes.
Forwardly gay? How is that?
Are you asking me to?
No, just give me an idea of what is how did you like what? Please, I don't know what forwardly gay means. Like, how did you forwardly gay the character?
Are you asking me this? You're trying to do it. It's not gonna happen.
I want to know, like, how did you?
Like, for example, I for the audition, I had to do the opening scene where they're in the gymnasium together.
Okay.
And then I had to do the scene where they're in the car together, but the scene was actually in a store, so it was a little bit different. Where they were like shopping for sex toys, so it was a little bit different. So, but
did you grab the sex toy? Like, yeah, let's go. Like,
no, it was just,
what is for? That's what I'm saying. I don't understand.
A little bit more flamboyant. So it was less on the masculine side. Well, I wouldn't say less masculine. Well, I would say less masculine. It just wasn't. It wasn't a void of masculinity, but it was a little bit more flamboyant. So my approach to it was a little bit more flamboyant. But I think this approach makes more sense for the world that they're in, because he isn't necessarily a gay presenting person. He, like, you would see him in a bar and not just assume he was gay. Unless you were in a gay bar, then you'd be like, oh, okay, this guy's gay. So I think that's how the character is presented on the show, which I think makes the most sense. And it works. It works. Like,
another tip here on Rewind with Ro here. Don't play your you went too, I can't say the word, but it reminds me of the movie.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're gonna say.
Can't go full. You went full.
Yes.
Hey, you live and you learn, right? Move on. Okay. So now we're going to, there's actually new episodes tonight. So we're just going to do last episode, kind of bring it to it, tie it with a nice pretty bow. The episode is called Snapshots of a Rendezvous. So Diarra's character now is she's basically lost all her money and to find out another clue, but now she's like, what the hell is going on? Because she's put in a predicament where her life is at risk. And then the Popo comes to save her, but she doesn't know what the Popo has involved. And then we're gonna learn that a little bit more as it unfolds. But I didn't know if it was gonna be like a Russian thing, right? Or they were gonna go full Russian twist, or at some point where people following her detectives, like what was going on, because you kind of see it throughout the whole episode, and then you're like, okay, what's going on? Who's this guy? What is he? Is he here to help, or is he with the Russians? Like that guy. Now we see that the Russian guy died, and we see it in the newspaper. So what's going on? Trying to find out. So I'm kind of still on the edge of my seat. Like, come on, give me some more, which is great because now I'm tuning into the next episode, and that's the best compliment I can give a show is that you're looking forward to the next episode. So right now, ladies and gentlemen, you got about 6 episodes, 6 that you can watch right now, which is great. So you really get a feel and vibe, which I kind of like. You don't have to, I hate one and then you got to wait next week and then you kind of forget about it and kind of go from there. So anyway, what do you think about that kind of last episode and how it's coming together?
It got real dark. It got real dark, but I think it was necessary. Her motivation comes back to continue the journey of figuring out what's going on, because I think she recalls after she meets some additional new characters, she has some of her memories come back and they become more clear, and she starts to realize some additional things that happen and what actually might have been taking place. And then also she makes a discovery that was left behind by him, which takes her on the path of like actually getting more involved in a very dangerous way in the journey of discovering where he's at and what happened to him. So I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for the next episodes to come out. I'm super excited to see how this season of the show ends, and I'm super excited. I sound like a kid. I'm super excited. I'm super excited to see if this evolves into like her becoming this detective to figure out what happens to people beyond this case. I don't know if this case is going to be solved this season or if it is going to be resolved into a second season. Whatever it is, I really like it, and I hope the show gets renewed, and I'm excited to see what happens next. And I think
Rob on the second season.
I think it's a very quality addition to the BET Plus lineup.
We don't get paid for that, but we just added that. Anyway,
it was much needed.
No, it's great. It reminded me of old BET, like some good shows. Like this is a good quality show. So I think that was missing. I was like, BET. I was like, oh God. I was like, when's the last time they did a good show? And I was like, okay, all right. And I was like, okay, we back. We got some people involved now, so that's good to see. Love to see us shine. Love to see Black women shine as well. So you really get to see a lot of Black women. I love it, of all different shapes, sizes, colors, which is beautiful. We're all represented on screen here. And that is Detroit, right? In a nutshell. That's really what that is. So I love that. And I love it. A city that needs, I believe it is filmed in Detroit. So I kind of like that they're bringing money back into Detroit and kind of all that stuff too. So, hey, first the football team changed, now this. So all the little things. So I highly recommend, check this show out. It's on BET. It airs every Thursday. BET Plus.
BET Plus.
You can't plus here. You can't put that across.
Plus.
Anyway, check it out. We highly recommend it. Right, Rob? You recommend?
I highly recommend it, yes. I'm giving this a solid 10 out of 10.
There it is. 10 again. He's back. That's okay. All right. That's Rob holding on to you because he's not going to let you leave him after you guys had a date. That's Rob holding on. He's 10, but he's holding on with the 10 fingers. What he's doing. Anyway.
10 out of 10.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. That's our show. 45 minutes. Pretty good. All right. Yeah. I don't know what we're doing next week. Oh, maybe we'll do one more episode, another episode of this, and then maybe add a movie. And I think something else is coming out. So we'll see. Go from there.
Yeah, you just let me know.
I will, Rob. Thank you.
I don't know if what you add is going to be a 10 out of 10, but
I mean, we had a pretty good year. I think they're solid.
Well, we skipped some that we watched that were definitely not a 10. So I'm glad we did.
Listen, people don't know that unless we say it. People don't know unless we say it. There was a streak of bad movies out. There was some streak of really, really like, woo, Lord. And then, People they fool you sometimes because when you see the numbers on Netflix, oh, number one on Netflix. I'm like, there's nothing else on. That's why. Sometimes these movies are number one because you've watched everything else on Netflix. That is why it's
this TV show is a 10 out of 10. It is a stellar writing. It's impeccably performed. I think that the editing was great. It's some great cameos, all-star cast. You know, Felicia Rashad, Morris Chestnut. It's got some great, you know.
Morris Chestnut look good, man. That man is like, what, he 55?
Yeah, still looking like he's 32.
Damn. Suppose he don't drink and he just works out all day. Hey.
It's really good, and I hope everybody watches it. It was worth me doing the free subscription to BET Plus.
There you go. They're giving it out free right now.
Well, it was it's a free trial.
Yeah, you got 2 days. That's it.
Yeah. I'll pay that $5.99 with commercials so I can finish watching the show. So they got a month of $5.99 out of me.
There you go. All right, everybody. Thank you again for tuning in. See you next week.
Peace.